Hello guys and welcome, I'm Redxi and today I'm going to be talking about BattleTech, and in particular I'm going to be talking about heat sinks, heat banks and heat exchangers. Now I was going to do this video a long time ago, but I went away, did a couple of other things, but a new DLC is out tomorrow, so I've pre-ordered it and I thought I'd dust it off a little bit, and there's a couple of things I want to do to my website which I'll come back to in a minute. But as you can see, I'm in game at the second and I'm pretty much into a fight. I'm not doing this tactically, excuse me. I'm not doing anything about this tactically. I just wanted to prove a point about the three different types and how much heat you can disperse and which one is better. So we've got three king crabs here. One of them has heat. This guy up here has heat banks, and as you can see, his heat bank or the amount of heat that he can take before he starts taking damage is significantly greater than the others.
Orders.
There's the size of that one, look, and this is the same,
Ready.
and this is the same, and this one up here, as you can see there, look, is significantly bigger. So what he's doing is, in effect, he can take more heat, or he can generate more heat before he starts doing damage to himself generally. But that's it. And because he's got the heat banks, obviously he's losing the heat sinks at the end of every round. So at the end of every round, he's just getting the 30 stock back and a couple of other heat sinks that he's got on him. And this guy here, he's the one with the heat sinks. He's just heat sinks. He's got no exchangers, got no heat banks. So at the end of every round, he's generating, I think, something like 120 heat, and he's getting something like 60 odd back or something. So he's full heat sinks. At the end of every round, he's losing a shitload of heat. And this is the guy with the heat exchangers, and he's got 45% reduction on him at the minute. There are some diminishing returns. I'll talk about that a little bit later on if I get into it. But this guy is all exchangers, 45%. He's got 4 exchangers on him, 1 plus and 3 standard, generating 45% less heat. This is the third round, and this guy is about to fire. So let me just move him up a little bit. I just want to show you something. So all of these three king crabs now, they've all fired a full amount of heat. They've all got the same weapons and they all generate the same heat.
They've got a sensor lock
It's
on
just
me.
the exchanges that it's just the heat sinks and the heat exchanges that are different. So let's have a little look here. So this is the guy with the heat banks. Now on his third round, I had to knock off 3 weapons for him to fire, and that's how close he is. So on the next attack, I'm still gonna have to knock off a couple of weapons before he can fire again. This is the guy with the heat sinks, and he's pretty much in the same boat. I had to knock off 2 weapons with him. He was 3 weapons I had to knock off, and this guy was 2 weapons I had to knock off for him to fire a 3rd salvo. So on the next round I'm going to have to do that again. And this is the guy with the heat sinks, and as you can see, is like 50%. He can do another 2, and on his 3rd salvo I didn't have to knock off any weapons, and he's got another. He's only 50%. I reckon I can get another 2, maybe 3 salvos out of him before I have to start fucking around with his weapons. So I have to say, looking at it, I mean the proof is in the eating, right? And it's right there, like 50% heat generated after. I mean these guys as well. If we go to, if we have a look here, these guys are generating 120 heat in total, you know. Oh, by the way, this is my website. It's just a little site so you can play around with some mechs. Do visit it. It's redxi.co.uk, BattleTech editor. Just go to redxi.co and there's a link there that takes you directly to it. But this is my king crab loadout that you're seeing at the minute. I know it says overweight there, but that's because I was messing around with the heat exchange. Just knock that off. Yeah, so these guys are generating 120 heat, and they're doing 392 damage per salvo, and they pretty much maxed out really. Now with this kind of heat, I'm thinking I might even change the outcome a little bit, but that's awesome. That's friggin' awesome. I can't believe that. I mean, like I said, this is the 3rd round and I'm already knock, I mean look, I had to knock 2 weapons off for that last round, and on this guy I had to knock off 3. This is a guy with heat banks, so the heat sinks are coming in a close second to the heat banks. I don't think the heat banks are very good at all, to be honest, and there's a little bit of disparity as well between little difference between them. I can't see a massive amount of difference. I mean, I would have thought that heat banks would be better mathematically, but I only had to knock off 2 weapons on this guy, and I had to knock off 3 in the King Crab, and I don't know why. So heat bank's worth it? No, I don't think so. I don't think so. Especially when it comes down to at the end of the round as well. Now, if this was the end of the round now, and I went to what do you call it, brace, I think the guy with the heat sinks would probably, oops, didn't mean to do that. That guy with the heat sinks would probably lose all that heat, and the guy with the heat banks would probably only go down to about 40%. So I think heat sinks are better than heat banks actually. But all in all, heat exchangers, fucking awesome, fucking awesome. Apparently there are some diminishing returns. I think the way it works is if you've got 3 10% heat exchangers, say you're generating 120 heat, and you put 1 heat exchanger on which reduces it by 10%, obviously that's 12 heat, so you'll end up generating 108 heat minus the 12, or you know, the 10% off the 120. Hope I'm making sense here. So you're left with 108 heat. Now if you add another exchanger, which is another 10%, it doesn't take the 10% off the 120, it takes the 10% off the 108. So the net heat the second heat exchanger will, the first heat exchanger reduces it by 12, and the second heat exchanger will reduce it by 10.8, and then obviously you take 10.8 off that, and then another heat exchanger probably reduces somewhere around the region of 9, whatever, and it just gets worse and worse and worse, up until the point where I would imagine it's going to be 6 or 7 10% heat exchangers, so around 60%. You're probably just reducing the amount of heat you're creating to the same value as a heat exchanger, and the heat exchanger, of course, 2 heat exchangers, 2 tons, will give you 6 less heat. So when you find that your heat exchanger is down to, is reducing the total value by 6, you're better off just using heat sinks then. But in general, I'd say that's, looking at it, this guy's on 45%, and he's way better than this guy with heat sinks. So I think you could probably take it down to, and he's got 4 heat sinks on it, I think you could take it down to 60, 70 before it starts, that diminishing return starts kicking in, to the point where it's not worth it. So I would like to try it. I'm going to try to fill this guy up with just heat sinks, and I'll see if I can find more heat banks as well, see how far up I can get that bar. And I'll come back to that, but in the meantime, there is, the proof is there. Heat exchangers, friggin' awesome. If you want to know where they are, they're up in Eurus and what's the name, Victoria, 2 planets in the north of the map. Let me just show you there. And there's this website, battletech.gamepedia/star systems, and there's, as you can see, there's Eurus and Victoria in the top of the map. It did take me some time to get the heat exchangers. I think I did like 20 jumps and I didn't get anything, and then all of a sudden I was getting them every jump. It's just RNG. So it's going to take a while, but it's not impossible, and I guarantee you there are heat exchangers and heat banks in Eurus and Victoria. So yeah, that's it. That's it. So visit the website and let me know what you think. I post some comments in YouTube video, in this YouTube video when I post it. I'd like to hear from you, and I'm going to make a video tomorrow about Flashpoint. I think I'm going to get up early and give it a go, and I try to get an early video in on YouTube, and let me know. I'll keep an eye out for that. So thanks for watching, guys, and I shall speak to you soon. Bye bye.